Hello and welcome to our today's session of the Connect and Grow Classy Talks podcast. I'm very happy to have Stefan with me today. We know each other from the ComoCamp already last year, and we also met this year. And maybe you would say a few words about yourself before we start into the topic.
Sure. Hi, I'm Stefan. I am an IT consultant, and I guess I'm here because a couple of years ago, I was in Vienna having lunch with Martin Schimak, and I said, I think DDD needs a kind of bar camp format. It was the time when DDD Europe was coming up. Kandinsky had taken place, the first German DDD conference. I was a
Yeah.
speaker there and I liked the conference a lot, but I felt I don't think that presentation format feels right for
Yeah.
the collaboration part. And then Henning Schwentner and Stefan Hofer were working on domain storytelling, which at the time was still in a very early phase. So the book didn't exist, the proper website didn't exist. So they had that idea, and you could tell that there's something about that, but there was not enough information on how do we do this? How can we learn about that? So
Yeah.
I actually said to them, well, you should do a bar camp on domain storytelling because I think that's the best format to teach people.
So that
And
people can actually try out and experience it themselves.
yes, then we brought a group of interested people and enthusiasts together and actually met in Hamburg for a day, did a workshop on what could ComoCamp be and what should ComoCamp be. It
Yeah.
was very interesting because there were lots of ideas. Should it be a training? Should it be more commercial? Should it be an open space? And we kind of settled for at least there should be an open space being part of that.
Yeah.
Then we organized a ComoCamp. And I've actually had beautiful conversations at ComoCamp and also following ComoCamp. So what we are seeing happening is that people start collaborations. I think you
Yeah.
have
I
yourself
can.
done things that they brought back to ComoCamp. So maybe you want to share some of that.
Yeah. No, I can definitely support this. It was last year, it was my first ComoCamp, and it was also the first time that I joined an open space. And I was rather nervous. I
Mhm.
remember that I'd sat there and then it was like, now come up with your own ideas. And I was like, oh shit, I don't have own ideas. Who am I? And then throughout the camp, I realized, okay, I have stories to tell. I was just not aware of them. And there were so many people that also encouraged me. And all these exchanges and also connections that I built throughout sessions that people proposed, sessions that I then did propose on the second day when I felt like, okay, there is something that I can share, or people are actually interested. That I went out of the couple camp with new friendships that I then fostered throughout the year. And this year it felt like coming back and already knowing half the group. And it was really
Mhm.
amazing to actually feel part of the community that I did not feel last year. So I'm a
Yeah,
big,
and
big
and
fan.
I think you could tell this year that there was this feeling of homecoming, of like a family reunion,
Yeah.
and then that gives you another level to start at. And I
Yeah.
think this is
Totally.
something that we really want to try and keep. Still, you also want to keep some rotation in the attendees. Obviously, some people would like to return, but it just doesn't fit their personal or professional schedule. That always happens. And then
Yeah.
there are others who are really eager to return. And I think it's gonna end up on the long term being a good mix of family reunion plus new people, new ideas, people who challenge the status quo. That's always incredibly helpful.
Yeah. We also brought some new colleagues that didn't join last year and who would also really felt welcomed in the community and also in the
Mhm.
party. So it was not like, hey, we are the family and you are the new ones. So it's that's also a nice thing. You have all these famous people around you that just are on eye level. You can just talk with them at a coffee machine or say, hey, do you want to join my session? Do you want to do a session even together?
And I
Um,
think this is a very big difference to a commercial conference where you always have, oh, that's the speaker and that's the attendee. And there is always, I frequently do speak at conferences and I feel this and I really don't like it. but it's not something that you can change. And at the open space, there's just a bunch of peers. Sometimes people don't even realize who is famous, which makes for great conversations because they challenge things from a very interesting viewpoint. And that makes for absolutely great conversations to listen to or join into.
Yeah, totally. So that's really amazing. And that's what I also liked. And even what I enjoyed is that the entry barrier is really low to actually do a session. Like really, if you want to speak at a conference, do a workshop or a talk, you have to hand in an abstract, you have to be chosen. And it's like very frightening at some degrees if you've never done this. But at this open space, you can just say, hey, I have a problem. Other people can help me or have ideas. And that's really amazing. So that we even also started at my company to do this at company events to say, hey, we do not do an official conference with a call for contribution, but we say, hey, let's do an open space format so everyone can just bring in their topics. And it's not always the same people, which is amazing for knowledge exchange.
It's great for knowledge exchange, and it's also great for more introverted people to show them that they can be part of this in a safe space. And nobody expects of you to give a 45-minute presentation. It's just basically, you can just go there and state a problem or say, maybe I have this idea, and then somebody's going to join in and there will be a conversation. Quite often it ends up not being exactly what you thought it would be, but something really different and interesting. And I think somebody once said, beyond the plan is where the adventure starts. And this is where you venture into new things and you get new angles. And it's not, now this is what I have prepared that we should discuss, and those topics, those bullet points should be part of the session. No. Somebody is going to be challenging that implicitly by just bringing it in a completely different point of view. Quite often you realize, oh, there are so many people out there who think alike. They have the same problems. They have the same ideas for solutions. So maybe after all, I'm not that wrong anyway. Maybe it's just, maybe I'm onto something here. And that's, I think, incredibly.
Yeah, I remember also this year there was a session from Marco Heimeshoff. He was like, hey, how can I use Como methods for product development? And basically he found out in the first 5 minutes, well, that's exactly part of it. Like Como methods are made also for product development. So he was like, his question was answered in the first 5 minutes. But the whole session turned then out into, hey, let's collect all Como methods that one knows and to see where can we use them. And then they did deep dives in or did explain some of them in more detail. And everyone was super happy with the session, but it was totally different than what the original idea was. And I also remember a session from last year because we had a workshop coming up where it was like, okay, we had 2 days and we needed to come up with Como methods to estimate this project of what was meant to last for a year and boil it down into numbers. So 2 days of collaborative modeling. And then in the end, we should have a price for this 1-year migration project. And there was a session that was not hosted by me, but I joined. And in the end, we all together sat there and made like a plan, like, hey, how can we do this? What are methods to actually break down something and then put a price tag on it? And everyone brought in their ideas, which was pretty amazing.
And I would say it's also a very interesting angle on agile methods in general. So whoever feels they are struggling with agile, maybe think about the open space format, which fosters collaboration and early sharing of ideas and being open to my ideas being challenged. And I think that's very, very helpful because the end result usually is a shared idea where more than one person buys into. And I don't have to convince others of my idea, but we have a shared concept that everybody sort of supports. And I think that's very, very valuable at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's also one of the core ideas of collaborative modeling in the end. So it fits very well together.
Yes. There are 2 news that we have at ComoCamp that I would like to mention because I think it might be helpful to use this space. So number one is, it is a non-profit thing, and it's going to stay a non-profit thing forever. And it's probably going to be limited to somewhere around 150 people, because you just can't do an open space with that intimacy. You cannot scale that. And also the location doesn't allow scaling. But for people who haven't seen it, it's a park in Vienna with a beautiful restaurant where you can basically, if the weather is nice, you can hang out somewhere at the park and do a session there. And people do this. You could not take this into a conference center or another location. So we are, in a positive way, kind of stuck in this location, which means we cannot really scale. That means we cannot bring in more money to do absolutely outrageously awesome things. And we'll always have to, at some point, start excluding people by saying, sorry, we're sold out. And then the second problem, which is, I think, the bigger one. So many companies out there don't get the idea of an open space, and they don't see the value. So if an employee says, I would like to go to that open space, they will say, okay, what you going to learn there?
I don't know
and
yet.
Then, so basically, if you talk to HR and say, I want a training, and you show them an open space, there seems to be an issue. So quite a few people end up taking days off and paying to attend ComoCamp out of their own pocket, which is, I think it says something about these people, which is positive. But I think there's also something that really could or should be improved from the employer's point of view. So what can we do to kind of get that idea of why is an open space? Why does it make sense? How can we get this out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, I also was very curious how does this really work before I didn't experience it myself, to be honest. I was like, are there actually enough topics? Is there something interesting? What will I take from it? Until I experienced it the first time. So I somewhat had to try it out myself. So maybe finding more and more ways to actually have open spaces in other settings, maybe introducing this format into also other areas, or like I just brought it to my company, said, hey, we do this in my company.
Yeah, did you have to convince somebody to do it? Or is your company just open enough that you say, hey, let's try this out, and they say, yes, let's do it?
I had to advertise it a little bit because people were afraid that we are there and then no one will offer a session. And I was like, no, trust me. So I have a good network within my company. So I had the trust of the people that I know what I'm doing, but people were skeptical until we tried it out. And then we got very good feedback. People really loved it. So we're taking it to bigger scale to now do this with the whole company and not only with one location. But it took a little bit of convincing. So, but I think sharing these stories already is one starting point. Sharing this like, hey, I learned so much, or even just like, what is special about it is that I have the chance to actually participate and not only listen. I can shape the session. I can shape it in a way that I get something out of it that I can use for my daily life. It's way easier to get this translation to what I need. And if we share these stories more, people will probably start thinking, okay, hey, maybe that's even more valuable. And especially for the ComoCamp, if you have this combination of first having the talks or the hands-on sessions where you get this input, that then triggers new ideas on, hey, what could I then do as a session, or what are topics that I want to go deeper into? That's kind of a very nice combination. Same also for the Kandinsky, where you have 2 days of conference and then 1 day of open space. So taking these combination is maybe also a very good step in that direction to actually get this idea more into the heads of people that don't have it on their mind yet.
Yeah. So in my experience, a crucial role is also the food, or let's say the meals. So usually what happens is you have colloquial conversations with people. You just end up sitting next to somebody, maybe somebody you haven't known, or maybe somebody you kind of have seen, know of, haven't talked to. You just sit next to them or sit at the same table. And usually a conversation happens, And I have so often, basically, out of those conversations, somebody said that should be a session.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
how it lasts.
that's how you take that back into the open space. And it makes it also easier. Well, for people not familiar with the open space, basically in the morning, there's a marketplace, you do a pitch. So you have to go up on stage and you have to do a like 30-second pitch. This is an idea for a session that I want to have or that I would like to have. And that takes some courage to do that, because then you put the session on the schedule and then you're supposed to host the session, which doesn't mean that you have to provide all the content, but you have to moderate the session. And that gives you that feeling of maybe nobody's going to show up. And
Yeah.
that would feel bad.
Yeah.
So if you have that prior conversations with people over lunch or over dinner and said, that should be a session and I would join this session, you have this positive
Confidence.
feeling of, okay, there's those 2 or 3 are going to join, and then this is going to work out. And I've had beautiful unconference sessions with very small groups.
Yeah.
I personally like them maybe even more than the larger ones. Larger ones, like conference speaking, is good for the ego. Oh, I have so many people interested in my session. But it's less of a conversation where everybody really engages. There's always a bunch of people who just want to listen in, which is also okay. But then the original idea of the open space is to at least try and give everybody a good chance of getting in.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I see this happening more and more. And I really like how many people referred to ComoCamp this year as a safe space where you can really, share some of your concerns, also talk about emotions or express emotions. And I've never in a single instance heard or witnessed that was an issue or somebody got negative feedback or vibes for that. And that's, I think, very, very unique for an open space as compared to a traditional conference where you always have the speakers up on the stage and the audience down there on the floor.
Yeah.
I've had a super cool video conference a couple of days ago because 2 people published something they had collaborated on, and it was actually published basically alongside ComoCamp. And I could see them working on something all the time, and they were really eager. And I looked at that, and they had some ideas. And normally, I would probably not have approached them and say, hey, I know you're asking for feedback, but I actually have some feedback. Since I had met them at ComoCamp, I contacted them and said, hey, I have some feedback. So we set up that video conference and had a beautiful conversation where it turns out that my feedback actually might not be completely stupid, to say it in a, so actually, probably the feedback was quite useful. And so then suddenly the idea of maybe you should do a bar camp on your thing was in the air. So I would actually urge everybody out there to probably not collaborate with me unless you want to end up with the idea of doing an open space at some point.
That's nice closing words. Thank you very much for joining the
It was my
session.
absolute pleasure.
I could talk even more about an open space format than about the
Yeah.
ComoCamp. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.